welcome back to the Holistic Health Podcast. How are we in December? What? How is this real?
I feel like that last quarter just Chewy hit the hyperdrive. What happened? Where did October and November go?
I know, I don't know. It's been a wild time, and I'm actually very glad that it is December because I usually don't really get like that ready. Like, I don't get that thing where I'm like, oh God, I can't wait for it to be the end of the year too often because I do feel pretty lucky in that my life is pretty bloody amazing the majority of the time. But I am feeling it this year a little bit more. And I don't feel burnt out, but I just feel that sense of like ready to switch my brain off for a short period of time. So yes, I'm looking forward to a few weeks off.
Oh, me too. I feel like the only week of the whole year I can truly switch off, like every single cell, is that week between Christmas and New Year's Eve. And
Mm,
yeah, I'm ready for a restful stop, but I particularly love that week because everyone's just their attention is on themselves, they're resting, and no one like needs anything from
mm,
me. But like
yeah.
I'm so grateful for my life and also very ready just to take some time to be still and not to be in the doing so much. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to like feeling fresh in the new year. You know, when you go to bed tired and you're like, oh, I can't wait to wake up and feel better. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think in the spirit of Christmas and the social season, something that I feel like I've been talking to clients about over the last, let's say, 3 or 4 weeks now, is just navigating some of the hard conversations that can come up around this time when you're doing more socializing, you're doing more like interacting with family, who you haven't, or people you haven't seen for a long time. And I think sometimes people just say or ask silly questions because they're nervous because they don't know what else to talk about. And sometimes they ask them because they just maybe aren't self aware or emotionally intelligent enough to know that it's probably not a comment or a question that is really necessary. But regardless, we're all living in this life with a very large range of humans. So I think it's just good to know maybe how to have some of those conversations around things like, if you someone's commenting on the fact that you're not drinking, or someone is commenting on your weight or your weight change, or someone's commenting on or asking you about when are you having a baby or when are you getting married, or those kind of life things that come up. And I personally, maybe we'll start with the drinking one because it feels like low hanging fruit. As many of you know here, I'm not really a drinker. So it is, and I haven't been one for the majority of my life. So I definitely can give you a few tips around this conversation. And I've used all different kinds of strategies. Like the first thing I would say is that you've got options. One option is that you just stay confident and you just say exactly what is going on, and you're just a bit of a straight shooter. The other is you hide behind humor. The other is that you like pretend to drink. And when I say that, I don't mean that in the sense of like elaborately, dramatically, fully embodied method acting of drinking. All I mean by that is like an example I gave a client the other day who just didn't feel like confronting, certain people in her life when she wasn't having a drink or the repetitiveness of it. I was like, just order a sparkling water with a piece of lime or lemon in it. Ask them to put it in a short glass, and no one's even going to ask you the question then because it looks like a vodka lime and soda or whatever those other drinks are. So that's one option. Or if it's a house situation or a picnic or whatever, pour whatever non-alcoholic drink you're having in a wine glass. Or a lot of the alcoholic free beverages now, that we've done podcast episodes on this, by the way, look really fancy and cool as well. And unless someone's really wholly committed to like investigating what you're holding, no one's going to blink twice. So there are ways to be subtle about it if you just prefer that approach. I often find if you say things with confidence instead of lean into their story about things like, oh, it's not as much fun, or you're super healthy, so you're not drinking. If you don't lean into that, people have less to go with. So I will often just lead with confidence or humor, in terms of just like, yeah, no, I'm not drinking. Like, I prefer waking up early for a surf. Or, no, I'm super into these insert non-alcoholic drink that you're having at the moment. Vespera drinks even, which is Amy's new brand. And if you say it in a way that you're not doubting your choice and you're not feeling like you're missing out and you're happy with it, it just gives people less wiggle room to weasel their way in and run with whatever FOMO that they think that you're having where you're probably not. So that's my very premenstrual version of my advice for you, is just like, just be confident, who gives a shit, but also the compassionate part of me knows that I have had times in my life where I felt really self-conscious, like I didn't belong when I wasn't drinking. And so I think, by all means, go the subtle approach if that works for you.
I think they were really great suggestions for someone to try. And I think building on what you just said about having self confidence, honestly, your energy is everything. And it has been very few and far between anyone's tried that shit on me, because I just don't think they would dare. But also, you want to decide how you want to like meet that energy as well. And obviously, you can feel if someone's intention is more pure and more heart centered, or whether it's projected shame from their point of view. And I think one of the reasons, for me, I haven't felt too sensitive around this sort of thing is I feel very centered and anchored in the decisions that I make. So if I'm not drinking, I remember going out one weekend, there was a whole heap of stuff on, like I was in my 20s, clubbing, and I was on a detox. So I was just drinking water all night and I had such a good time. The only person who asked me about it actually was some rando at the bar that said, "Oh, what are you on?" I'm like, "H2O, man."
Mm.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, you just don't even have to buy in. So, just be very clear. If you're feeling a bit self conscious about it, that's your work to do. But if you don't, then how you respond can either be, you can choose to be generous, or you can choose to be neutral, or you can choose to actually just bounce it back to them and make them feel like the douche that they are for asking such a silly question. Um, so you could say things like, I don't know, there's so many things you could say, and I'm not premenstrual, but I feel like I don't know, just vibing the PMS vibes right now because I'm feeling a bit sassy myself. And
Yeah.
I'd probably say something. First of all, I'd probably just say, sorry, what was that you just asked me? And then make them repeat it. There's nothing like making someone who asks a silly question say it again. So they've got an opportunity to actually reconsider what they're doing. And you can simply say, I'd rather talk about something more interesting. Um, and just kind of
Mm.
move the conversation on to something else. And, if you like them, you could be a bit more generous and say, ugh, I'm not talking about something that boring. How about how's something going for you? And just kind of move on from that conversation so that you don't kind of get stuck there. But I think you do need to practice what you're comfortable with, and you also want to make sure that, depending on who you're talking to, you might want to be a little bit more generous and a little bit more flexible in your response. Whereas if you're talking to someone that you don't have a lot of time for, and that kind of question is just an absolute jab at you, I would be just cutting that conversation off myself.
I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, and also hopefully it goes without saying, but if you are someone who usually asks people why aren't they drinking, just don't. Like, I
Yeah.
just feel like we don't need to ask people these questions. I just
Mm-mm.
don't get it. Anyway, and then I think honestly, similar could be said about food.
Mm.
So again, definitely have had this experience in my past, not now. I just think maybe I'm not very, maybe I'm not a social, or people are just less inclined to question me these days. But, if you're choosing to not have the cake at the party, or you're choosing that, no, you're full from dinner, you don't want dessert. I mean, go for it if you want it. That's not the message here. But the message is more, I think what happens to a lot of people, at least from clients that I've spoken to, is that the desire to say no is there, or to stop at whatever food you've had, and you don't really want to say yes to more, or, bread's being passed around and you're like, oh, I don't want to be rude, but also I don't really feel like it. But the knowing how to say no in like a kind and compassionate way and staying anchored in yourself, I think that's where it gets tricky. Especially, I know that it can be hard if someone else has cooked for you, or there's that kind of dynamic. So, of course, read the room, and maybe there are situations where you just make do with the best that you've got in that context. But
Mm.
what I would say is, if that you really don't want to consume something, no matter what it is, food wise, whether it's dessert, whether it's something that has gluten in it, whether it's like something that's got dairy in it, whatever, just there's a few strategies that I've suggested to people in the past. So one is that you can do the delay and avoid tactic, which is basically when something is, say you're at a party and cake's being passed around, and someone's like, oh, here you go, here's yours. In that moment when that one is about to be offered to you, pop off to the bathroom and do a wee, don't do a wee, wash your hands, come back, and then have a drink and hold your drink in your hand. And then if someone's like, oh, do you want some cake? You can just be like, I'm so stuffed right now, but I'll get some in a bit, and and also keep your hands busy with and when I say drink, like I just mean like water or whatever drink you've got,
Mm.
so that again, it's not, you've got a little bit of a buffer, is what I'm going to call it, between saying, oh no, I don't want any of your cake, and saying, yes, I want to have something that I don't really feel like having. So that's one tactic. The other strategy is that you actually can just say no and not explain. And I think the hard thing about that for some people is just staying anchored in your own like system with your no, with no other explanation, knowing that sometimes that can be received in a bit of an awkward way, because a lot of people aren't used to, particularly women, just saying, oh no, thank you, with no explanation. And I think staying grounded in it when or if you get pushback, and you might not, like these are just preparing you for the pushy ones of, oh, but your grandma made this especially for you, or, but it's Christmas, you've got to have some cake.
Mm.
You can just say, oh, thanks so much, but I'm okay. And not offer up any further explanation, reason, context. That is actually enough. So
Mm.
those are two strategies that you can use. There are other ones. Do you have any other kind of ideas around that situation if someone's like currently eating in a way that really makes them feel well, and all of a sudden there's other foods coming around and their desire is actually not to eat them, but they feel a bit obligated to?
Yeah, look, the 10 years I've been in therapy, at this point, I'm like, I just wouldn't stand for any of that. But what I will say is if you are still stuck in people pleasing and good girl programming, maybe one of your 2026 goals can be to go to therapy and work on that. But if I'm trying to rewind back to a time where I just didn't have good boundaries and felt uncomfortable about saying no and maybe hurting someone's feelings or letting them down, I'm pretty sure I would have at some point maybe said, oh, yeah, I'd love some. I'm full at the moment, so I might take some home with me and have it later. Like that could
Mm.
be, I suppose, a compromise to appease someone, especially if they're pushy and annoying about it, or maybe they're a bit sensitive and you're trying to be mindful of that. And let's say they've gone to a lot of effort to create, grandma's or great grandma's family heirloom recipe. You can be like, yeah, I'd love to take some home with me, but I can't fit it in right now.
Mm.
Can you save me a piece for later? Something like that. I know in the past I've done that and just like handed it off to my husband, and he just has no complaints about that. Um,
That's also a great strategy. My husband would also, anyone's cake, in fact, he will eat. So if anyone sees me out socializing and you don't want to eat your cake, offer it to Bowen.
yes, actually, that's a good point. Just look for the disposal units, children, husbands, like take it, offload it. I am actually just thinking back though to one night. Where I was in a really like yucky position. I'd gone out on a date. It had gone, it was pear shaped. It was a dangerous human. But unfortunately, I'd gone to like dinner with a wine flight. And anyway, I'm sure I've told this story before where I commando rolled across South Head Road in Rose Bay. Like, anyway, it was an absolute debacle. But where I'm going with this is we got to this other bar. I was too intoxicated. I actually got the bar wrong. I was trying to get to a bar where my friends were so they could rescue me because I felt very unsafe. We ended up at some other bar, and then we'd gone to the bar. He offered to get me a drink and I said, "No, I'll have water, thanks." And then he turns around and orders two vodka lime and sodas, just completely ignoring me. So I took my drink and then again, I wasn't thinking straight. I should have taken it to the bathroom and put it down the sink, but I poured it into the poor, unsuspecting pot plant in the corner of the bathroom.
Oh,
So, just hif it somewhere if you absolutely have to. Yeah, whatever you need to do what's right for yourself. But I will say, how long ago was that? That's got to be 10 years ago. I don't think I was in therapy yet, but now I would just absolutely say no thanks. And if someone kept pushing me, I'd make them feel really fucking awkward about it. Now, you don't have to go that far, but there are definitely some middle grounds, and Nat's definitely the voice of reason and consideration more than me here. But if all else fails, take it and then biff it in the bin on the way through the kitchen.
yeah, there you go. Strategy for everybody.
Yeah.
And what about, I guess, the more like deep life questions that can come up around, for example, around fertility and pregnancy? I think that's a big one for a lot of people. And, whether, and I think it can be a tricky conversation for a lot of people in various circumstances. Like for some people, it can be tricky because maybe they're not in the situation where they even know if they want children or not. It could be difficult because they're already trying and it's not going to plan, or they've had miscarriages, or they're not in a situation where they've got a partner or willing to do it on their own, or they're navigating all of that. I think there's so many reasons as to why something like that can be hard. And I can't say that I've personally really ever felt the full weight of like having a challenging conversation like that. I think because the people that I socialize with already know where I stand on whatever, like on really important stuff in my life, and so it's not something that's difficult to talk about. And B, my family are, again, all very close, and so everybody knows everything about everyone, and it's just not a thing. But I think I'm more of a unique unicorn in that, and very lucky. But I do think that other people, and I know for some of my clients, it can be really challenging. And yeah, I don't know, what do you think, Ames, like if you have someone in that situation, or if you've been in it yourself, whether it's about children or something else that is life decision related, do you have any ways that you've navigated it or would suggest people could navigate it?
This is a really sensitive one for sure. And again, it really depends on who it is. I feel very lucky that I've never really been put in awful positions like that either, for different reasons. Unlike your family who talk about everything, my family don't talk about anything. So, like, it's like the English, like, stay mum, stiff upper lip, no one asks anyone anything or says anything. I've really only had one sad encounter after a recent miscarriage where, a woman off the street looked at my belly and was like, "Oh, congratulations," and said something else
Mm,
nice. And I just literally miscarried like a day or two earlier. And it's like when it's someone who just literally doesn't know. I mean, first of all, I think we all know by now, just don't comment on women's bodies. I don't care if that baby's halfway out of the vagina. Don't ask someone when they're due. Just wait till they tell
Mm.
you, here's my child. But it was an older woman, and I know older generations, it's a different societal norm. Fertility issues weren't quite the way they are now, blah, blah, blah. But here's what I would probably do if someone tried to start a conversation with me about a subject I wasn't prepared to speak about or was too sensitive at the time. And I would probably say something just really kindly and gently, like, thank you so much for asking. I appreciate you're really curious and I know that you mean well, but that's not something I want to talk about right now. And then
Mm.
change the subject. So you can acknowledge that they may not have good intentions, but also I like to assume the best of everybody. Some people are just nosy and gossipy. Some people have other agendas. Some people are just mindlessly curious, and others are genuinely
Mm.
like curious and like, cheering and praying for you for things that they think you might want or know that you do. So I think it's always nice to take an approach where you just give someone the biggest benefit of the doubt that they adore you and they really are just asking from a really loving place. And you can just say, essentially it just says, I appreciate you and I hear your question, but this is a no-go zone for me.
Mm.
Yeah, just saying something like that. And I'll repeat that if anyone kind of missed it the first time. But yeah, thank you so much for asking. I know you mean well, but that's not something I want to talk about right now. And then that's,
Yeah.
a full sentence. And you can either just kind of stop there, especially if like it's someone that, you know, maybe you're not that close with, and perhaps they aren't asking from a really pure, generous place, and just let them sit in the awkwardness of having asked you something that really is in 2025 inappropriate, unless you broach that they shouldn't be asking you. Or if it's someone you absolutely adore, like I can imagine someone's, eccentric granny who's like just can't wait for the next generation of great grandchildren to come along, and who adores the shit out of you, who just like and sees you like twice a year and just wants to a little status update. You can just say, I just don't want to talk about that right now, but let's talk about you, and then ask them something about them, or just change the subject. Like, I'm just thinking ahead to my family Christmas. It's not really relevant because my family wouldn't do this to me. But if someone did, I would just say something like, don't want to talk about that right now, but I'd love to hear how X, Y, and Z is going for you.
Mm.
Redirect the conversation. That sort of avoids an awkward silence, an awkward moment. It gives them sort of time to like process that they went somewhere that they shouldn't have. And also, you're giving them like an out, you're giving them an olive branch saying, you can talk to me about this. Or I'm going to talk to you about this other thing that I'm really excited about. So, yeah, there's a few ways you can navigate that. But it is also tricky because if they are sensitive points for you, like going into events like this prepared with what you're going to say if someone steps
Mm.
into that space will help you feel a bit stronger and less rocked by, a question that catches you off guard.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And that's exactly what I would do as well and encourage. And on the back of what you just said there about being prepared going into it, I also think being prepared coming out of it. So,
Yeah.
what I mean by that is making sure you have time afterwards in order to just like feel whatever emotion it is that's come up in that situation or in that conversation, and let yourself vent, let yourself cry, let yourself rage, whatever it is, because I think it's really understandable that some of these things are really triggering or challenging and have an emotional response for you. And I also agree that the majority of people that ask or that are commenting, I really don't think that majority of people are coming from a place of intentionally trying to make you feel shit. I think it's a combination of just that either they're not aware that it's a really challenging topic for you to discuss, or that it's not generally okay to ask people about it, or they're nervous. And I'm sure we can all relate to being in a social situation and saying something or asking something and then being like, why did I say that? Why did I ask that? And so I think while it's still valid to feel angry or upset or hurt, I think just try not to judge people off single conversations or single comments, because we are far greater than just sometimes poor choice of words in social situations. But also, just because I'm offering that up as, I guess, some compassion and some grace for people, doesn't mean that you need to put yourself in situations or constantly expose yourself to that if it's hurtful, and also doesn't mean that you shouldn't take time to feel whatever you feel. So just if you know you're navigating a hard season from that kind of perspective or something similar, just make sure you've got space built around some of these social occasions so that you don't like end up at the end of it just wound up with so much emotion that it then comes out in another way, and you just have that horrible feeling of, when everything's just building up and building up and building up and it just feels horrible in your system. You don't want to sit in that, place for too long. So just regularly integrate some space and time for yourself to process in whatever way feels best for you.
Such good advice. Definitely healing it on the other side is important. So you're not holding on to it and putting it on somebody else as well.
Yeah. And what about, I guess, to wrap up the episode, is there anything that is going to be particularly challenging for you this Christmas that you're comfortable sharing, or know how you navigate?
Yes, so there's a few things. We're going to be heading away for Christmas to spend time with, well, we've got two families across two different states, and each of those brings with them certain challenges and certain stresses and certain sadness, really. And for me, just speaking on that part first, I've already got a bit of a game plan around how I'm going to take care of myself, before and after those times where we're connecting with our various family members, making sure I get plenty of rest, plenty of white space, that I'm doubling down on nervous system regulation and self care so that when I'm in situations that might be challenging for honestly any number of reasons, right? I feel like I've filled my own cup and can be the most present that I can be, which allows me to be the most responsive and be able to take care of myself the best possible way, but also others around me. But in addition to that, I've got down on my packing list like theanine and herbs that are just like a chill pill.
Mm.
This is not a deliberate plug for Vespera at all, but I suppose probably most people are, but like the more alcohol you drink, the more sensitive you might feel, or the less able you are to respond very intentionally to situations that are tricky family dynamics, whatever it might be. And so, whenever I'm anticipating a challenging time, and it doesn't even have to be family related or Christmas related, but like literally anything, it could be a social event, and I'm like, I just don't need my system to be influenced by alcohol. I will not drink. I will not drink it. And I'd often, if I'm going out, I'll have a one or none kind of policy. It's quite rare that I'll have more than one. But on occasions like that, it's so tempting because alcohol can make you feel a bit more relaxed once you've have more. And that's when things can go pear-shaped potentially. It's never happened to me yet, but I'm also so mindful that if I'm, tired, stressed, there's stuff going on around me, I want to be just fully centered. And so, I would take Sodally, I would take, my husband might take alcohol-free beer, I might take gin and tonics that are alcohol-free versions. And this year I've got Vespera, which is like doing double duty because there's one formula that helps lift my energy and makes me feel all happy and bubbly just without drinking alcohol. And then there's another one that just like calms my farm if my nervous system feels like
Mm.
super on edge. So, yeah, but I also know, going into situations like that, like not to flog myself with late nights and lots of social activities or stretching myself too thin with work because that all wears on my nervous system. So that's one thing that I'm really mindful of. And the other one is like for me, being really consistent with my sleep, but also my movement is just so vital to making sure that I'm a kind, calm, generous human. And sleep, you can kind of maybe have a nap during the day. Like, let's say I had a late night last night, I could have had a nap this afternoon to kind of balance it out. But in terms of movement, it's not like you can kind of catch up if you miss a day or miss a few days. So the other thing that I'm doing with, traveling both ends of the country is I've got a little travel Pilates kit and I have a membership to an online Pilates studio, fluid form Pilates at home, if anyone's like curious. There's lots of other ones, but I just adore hers. It's so good. I've been a member for years. It's like $20 a month if you remain like an annual member or something like that. You get the kit for free. It fits in a little bag. I literally traveled around with it recently in my suitcase. And the workouts can be anywhere from 10 minutes to 20, or you can double classes and do longer sessions. But it just means in between, in those pockets of like socializing or running around and organizing things or Christmas cooking and baking, there's just no excuse not to like fit in and squeeze in a workout. I'm all about making it work for you. Actually, by the same token, I have a membership to the yoga studio app to make sure I can do yoga on the run as well. Again, 5-minute classes through to 60 minutes. So that's what mine are and what I'm doing. What about you?
I love that. You've covered so many. I will just give maybe one in the interest of time because we do have to wrap up in a couple of minutes. And I feel like you covered so many practical ones that people can run with. So I think one thing that I can feel relevant for me is that I am saving for something at the moment, so I don't want to be spending lots of money, eating out or doing lots of paid activities over the social season. So something that I'm being really intentional about is looking for ways and being assertive with catching up with friends or, date days or nights with my husband that are things that are based on either being really low cost or no cost. And I think everyone appreciates that because Christmas can be a really expensive time of year for people. And so finding things, I mean, we're very lucky in the southern hemisphere that generally speaking we've got good warm weather, so being active and outdoors is an option, but just getting creative with that. And that's one of the main things that I'm going to be doing. My kind of social calendar doesn't actually become that much more full. I honestly think this summer I'll probably just mostly be trying to surf as much as possible. And I won't get to see my family until after Christmas just because of some logistics in my life right now. But I'm also, we're okay with that. We're just making it work this year. So I think hopefully from that episode, you've got some ideas, some tools in your toolkit to navigate. Know that you're not alone in finding this time of year challenging if that is the situation that you're in. Of course, it can be wonderful and celebratory and amazing. And also, I think it can be really hard and weird and odd and unsettling. And so, wherever you're sitting on that spectrum, or if you're bounce balling around it, just know you're not alone and that, just don't forget what matters to you, what helps you feel restored. And, I think we'll make it out the other side, all of us, into 2026. But we have one more episode coming for you this year, which we will share obviously with you next week. And yeah, we'll be back in your ear holes then.
See you then, friends. Bye.